Thank you all so much for joining us today for the second session in our Inspiring Leaders in Philanthropy web series. Today with our special guest, Tony Mason. All right, George, let's get started.
Thank you, Lindsay, and welcome everyone for joining us today. I am thrilled to be here with Tony and Scott, and I'm going to actually ask them to share a little bit about themselves personally that they'd want you to know before we get right into our questions about having a local impact from a philanthropy perspective when it's a more local national partnership. So let me start with Tony and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, it's an honor and a privilege to be here and to be a part of this conversation today. My name is Tony Mason, and I'm originally from Evanston, Illinois, moved to Indianapolis in the mid-90s. I'm a Miami of Ohio graduate, and prior to becoming the president and CEO of the Indianapolis Urban League in 2014, I served as the senior vice president of the Super Bowl host committee here in Indianapolis. I also was the executive director of the Circle City Classic, worked at the NCAA for a stretch, and also worked at Indiana Black Expo as the director of family and youth programs. And in every job I had, every role involved me engaging with the community and helping young people and families to move forward.
Well, thank you, Tony, for sharing that. And I will tell everyone that being a Kentucky native, I remember coming up to Indianapolis for the Circle City Classic and the Black Indiana Expo. So we're glad to have him join us. I have with me Scott Davison, who is the chair of the American College of Financial Services Board of Trustees. And Scott, share a little bit about yourself with us.
Thanks, George, and great to be with you, with Tony again. And yes, I am Scott Davison. My day job, in addition to serving as chair of the college, is I am chairman, president, and CEO of the Companies of OneAmerica. We are a 144-year-old life insurance, retirement plan, and employee benefits company. We hold about $98 billion in assets under administration, and we're focused in life insurance, retirement plans, long-term care, and group life and disability. I've been in the industry almost 35 years now. I've been with OneAmerica 20 years. Also, like Tony, very active in the Indianapolis community at a local level, both in the healthcare space and also in issues of racial equity, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I also have the privilege of serving as the chair-elect of the American Council of Life Insurers, so spend a fair amount of my time helping the industry think through how we're going to make an impact at the local level through our national reach.
Thank you, Scott. And I will tell you all that Scott has agreed to host me and my wife at one of the upcoming Indianapolis 500 events. And I'm looking forward to getting there for that whenever we can move past the pandemic, but excited to get back to the great city of Indianapolis. So what I want to talk about today is really to focus on Indianapolis and what's happening at the ground level. So Tony, I want to start with you.
Yes.
There's a $100 million gift from the Lilly Foundation. There's a partnership with the National Urban League, an organization that has been civic-minded, helping the well-being of communities across America. And then it's all come down to you're driving it for Indianapolis. And it seems like a perfect scenario of the things that we want to cover today about how you take these national issues and parlay them down at what really happens on the ground. So tell us, give us the dynamic of what's going on in Indianapolis as you pull all this together and you're leading to make a big impact on the community.
Sure, absolutely. And really for the attendees today, I do want to share a little bit about the Indianapolis Urban League. We've been around since 1965. Our first president and CEO, the late Sam Jones, is considered to be one of the ultimate CEOs in the Urban League movement, as he led this facility up until his passing in 2002. And the current Urban League facility bears his name. He was succeeded by Joe Slash. And in terms of our organization, we function as a multi-service center, in essence. We've seen some significant growth since 2014. Our staff's doubled in size. We are a center for working families. We have a number of new programs. We've had some key milestones along the way. We've established a sustainability endowment, and we own our building. And in 2019, we hosted the National Urban League's annual conference with support from OneAmerica and others in this community. The $100 million grant award from the Lilly Endowment, an amazing contribution of support, if you will. And what people need to know is that the endowment was quite intentional in reaching out to myself and engaging the National Urban League in this work, because the endowment, as you know, is partnered with the Indianapolis Urban League and a number of community organizations over the years to attempt to address poverty and to get at the challenges that impact underserved people in this community. And so the idea that they would approach us and to say, what is the best way in which in this moment that we could support the Urban League with its work and support the community. And through that, the importance of this partnership is it not only involves the Indianapolis Urban League, but it also involves the African American Coalition of Indianapolis. And in essence, what we are going to be doing over the next few months is arriving at what the priorities will be for funding. And so to be clear, the grant was made to the National Urban League. So the endowment has had a longstanding partnership with the National Urban League as well for the work to be done in this community, in Indianapolis, specifically Marion County. And so we, along with the coalition, which includes 20 community organizations, many of which you know, Indiana Black Expo, the 100 Black Men, the NAACP, UNCF, you name it, are all involved with this work. And so we are going to be looking at what the priorities will be for funding in Black business development and entrepreneurship, education, employment, health and wellness, as well as housing and home ownership. We're also going to be looking at civic engagement and leadership, and also looking at organizational capacity building, particularly with the nonprofits and specifically Black-led nonprofits in the community, those who have been around for a while like the Urban League, but as well as the emerging community organizations that are doing a lot of work at the grassroots neighborhood level. And so the endowment is to be commended for this generous grant. Of course, it's no small undertaking, but it reflects the vision of Clay Robbins and the leadership team at the endowment. We're working very closely with Ronnie Cloth, one of the vice presidents who we meet with twice a month to discuss our progress with this work. And the African American Coalition is led by Mr. Willis Bright, who is the chairperson of the group, but also is a former Lilly employee. He spent 27 years there in a grant-making role on that staff. So this is an amazing place-based grant, if you will, and hopefully it could become the model for not only what can happen here in Indianapolis, but in urban communities across America. And I say that because we as the Indianapolis Urban League, we're one of 90 Urban League affiliates across America. And so just imagine if we can have the sort of impact that we hope to have here, what could happen across the country.
Tony, thank you. And I commend the Lilly Foundation for such a huge contribution that I really believe will make a difference in knowing that we have leaders like you, both in Indianapolis and across the country, that are going to participate in that process. We really want to look at what the success is going to be. So think about it. You have a national philanthropic organization like Lilly that makes this contribution to a national organization, the National Urban League. Yes. And now you're hearing from Tony on the ground. But the fact is, in Indianapolis, there are great companies like OneAmerica that are also participating in and making a difference, making a contribution. And so I'd love to hear from Scott about, okay, there's the things that you all are leading and driving that where you want to make a difference, and then sort of how you look at plugging into some of these other things that are going on at the local level for you to have this real big impact on your community there in Indianapolis.
Yeah, the way we look at it is it's really about trying to leverage all the opportunities that we have in front of us, national, local, and also what we're already doing as a company. So that's kind of the three buckets that we put our work in kind of racial equity into. First is national. So we're very involved in what the American Council of Life Insurers is doing. I'm helping co-lead that effort with them. And there, a lot of it is focused on the assets that insurance companies have, and how can perhaps we steer some of our investments that we make as part of our ordinary course into vehicles that can also help lift up communities? And then can we bring that down to the local level, cities like Indianapolis, which is where I'd like to obviously see it happen. And then George, with the college and the 4 steps forward, particularly when it comes to literacy programs for Black women, how can we bring that, utilize those tools and leverage that resource and bring that into the local community? And then the second pillar for us is local. So I am a co-chair of one of the pillars of a group of company CEOs that's called the Business Equity for Indy Committee. It's not an organization. It's simply a group of like-minded companies that are partnering with Tony and other organizations within the Black community to use the assets, again, that we have as companies. And some of that's money, but it's also talent, resources, and the ability to drive change. And how can we connect those into what's happening at the Urban League with the support of the incredible support of the Lilly Endowment? And then internally, we started several years ago working on a program that we call our Pathways program. And it really has 2 elements. The first element is making sure that every job at OneAmerica has the ability to turn into a good job. And a good job is defined by Brookings Institute in Indianapolis as the opportunity to make $18 an hour in total cash compensation, plus medical benefits. And in our case, we have a defined benefit pension plan. And so if we're going to really make progress in the fight against poverty, and particularly for those in underserved communities, and particularly for Black and Brown people, we really need to start with ourselves. The second piece of the Pathways program is building pathways to employment from the most underserved neighborhoods in Indianapolis. And to do that, we need partners. So we need partners like the Urban League. We need partners if we're going to help people out on East Washington Street in Indianapolis. The best partner in that neighborhood is Shepherd Community Center. And there are other partners in other parts of the city that we work with to help to leverage what they do best, which is work with their clients, work with their neighbors to provide resources in the community, and also do what we do best, which is to teach people about our business, help people get comfortable and succeed in a business environment. And it's our goal to have at least 20% of our workforce every year be recruited through our Pathways program. We're building that program open source and then hoping to evangelize that across other companies in the region. And actually, today, a very large employer in Indianapolis is announcing their own version of a Pathways program that was, I think, somewhat inspired by our work, but is very creative and has the ability to really scale for another part of the Indianapolis community. So it's really tying the national, the local, and then what we're already doing internally, and using all those assets in a coordinated way to build the community and actually make a measurable impact.
Scott, I want to thank you for being a leader and leading OneAmerica and engaged in the community and really trying to make a difference. But when I'm sitting here listening to all this, I got to think, man, I bet that this is the kind of partner Tony loves. The things that you're talking about. So Tony, after hearing that from Scott, like what would be your response? How do you take all of that and recognize these are the kind of corporate partners that you have in your community?
Absolutely. I mean, I want to start out by commending OneAmerica, obviously the Lilly Endowment, and there are so many others, the Chase Foundation, Cummins, so many who have stepped up in response to the pandemic, but also we're doing good things along the way. This work is so important when you hear Scott talk about good jobs. A lot of people don't realize it, but Indianapolis has 248,000 African Americans. If African Americans were a city alone, it would be the 3rd largest city in the state of Indiana. Yet 28% of African Americans in Indianapolis are poor. You also, if you look at the United Way's data, you also will know that 44% of all people in Indianapolis and in central Indiana are either classified as poor or working poor. So imagine the impact on our tax base if we were able to propel people from the state of poverty and the challenges that they find themselves in to now becoming self-sufficient, being in good jobs with livable wages and benefits. 82,000 people here in Indianapolis live in food deserts. Think about that. So food insecurity is a major challenge here. And so the fact that we've got companies like OneAmerica and others that are working to address these issues, are huge. Home ownership, Black home ownership has declined from 46% down to 31% since 2007. These are really tough challenges. And again, poverty doesn't just impact African Americans, it impacts all people in this community.
That's great, Tony. Thank you for sharing that. So for our audience, I want you to think about something. When the American College of Financial Services talked about creating a program called 4 Steps Forward that was addressing a pathway for Blacks for upward mobility and wealth creation, one of the pillars is called collective impact. And collective impact is actually the establishment of these partnerships at the local level, where that you have a Lilly endowment, you have other organizations that are putting up financial contributions, you have community organizations with lead organizations like the Indianapolis Urban League, and then you've got great corporate partners that like OneAmerica. That's not just the financial contributions; it's the intellectual contributions that are going toward that, and that is really what's going to make a difference. I used to be in the government affairs space, and we always talked about politics was local. Well, guess what? If we're going to make a difference in this space, it's local. And we're going to have those local leaders that are driving this in terms of where we're going. Now, the comments that Tony made actually leads us to another thing, that let's talk about the locality of Indianapolis and that some of the things that he shared that are so reminiscent across other communities. The poverty, the challenges for food, the challenges for good jobs, wages, knowledge, financial literacy, financial well-being. So when I think about those things, you've got a history, Tony, of being a part of trying to lift people out of poverty to give them a better chance. Let's talk about the financial literacy component of this. How do you make me smarter? You've gotten me a job. I'm now working at OneAmerica, and Scott's got me on a plan that I'm going to be able to be able to do better financially for my family. But there's still this knowledge thing that I have. And I'm not sure of I'm glad I got money and I'm doing better, but I'm still not sure of all the things that I need to do. And unfortunately, because of the housing decline, ownership, the fact that some have never even had to be a part of ownership because of the poverty, I actually haven't learned all the things necessary to do better, to be smarter with the money I have. So how do we help them in that regard? So I want, Tony, I'd love for you to start, and then I want to go to Scott and really expand a little bit on the things that he shared a little bit about the Pathway program.
Well, first things first. I mean, I commend OneAmerica and others that are looking at wages, because the Brookings Institute's made it really, really clear that in order to move families forward, it's actually not enough for minimum wage to reach the $15 level. If you're trying to help families, it really needs to be at the $18 to $19 per hour level. And if you're really trying to boost families above and beyond the benefits cliff, then you're really talking about $23 per hour. Minimum wage is $7.25. And we know that in many instances, a number of our companies and businesses and corporations will have to stair-step that process. But the fact that at the local level, we don't have to worry about the state or what the federal government does. If we have corporations that are committed to helping families and individuals, then they will gradually move to increase wages for jobs. And that's important because you can have financial literacy programs, but if in the case of, say, Black families who earn 40% less than white families in this community, so you're talking about, in many cases, Black families earning less than $36,000 a year, it's very, very difficult to have a conversation around financial literacy when people find themselves struggling to survive each and every day. But I can tell you that at the Urban League, we have had success through our Center for Working Families, where we employ a financial coach whose role is to help the individuals and the families who commit to being a part of our Center for Working Families. And so I can say, as a first generation college graduate in my family, there were a lot of things that I had to learn on my own or through my older brother about financial management. And then the things that I learned from my in-laws and others that helped me. But oftentimes families don't have the benefit of that. So the initiative that OneAmerica is undertaking, the work that we're doing here, and that the work that is happening at so many community centers and Center for Working Families in the city is just crucial, because it's once families start making the livable wages, they still are going to have to manage those dollars in order to make ends meet, because we encounter families each and every day where the parents are working 2 and 3 jobs and are still struggling. And so if we can all do our part in that, then again, we can help people to start to move forward.
Thank you for that, Tony. Now, Scott, I want to ask you to do something for me. As I shared with everyone, Scott is chair of the trustee board at the American College of Financial Services, and I have the honor and benefit of talking to him on a weekly basis. A lot of times it's about what the college is doing, but he's also become a mentor of mine that is actually giving me advice on things to do to be a better CEO. Well, one day we were talking about this living wage issue. And Scott was sharing it with me, and I paused, and we were talking. I'm like, man, how do other CEOs respond to that? And because, some people say like, well, if we're going to talk about minimum wage, is that a Democratic issue or a Republican issue? And what you're hearing here is this is not a political issue. This is a real life issue for people trying to have a better life and for organizations who want to provide a better life. So I remember asking Scott, like, how did you get comfortable with it? How did you get your board comfortable with it? How would you help other CEOs, other companies get comfortable with this and not get caught up in the political stuff of, you're going to go to minimum wage stuff, as opposed to really what this is about, of making a difference for the people who are working for you and being a part of the community. So, Scott, if you could help those out there that are part of that process to really think about this a much broader perspective and the real impact that it can have on your community.
Yeah, thanks, George. I'll mention 2 things. First of all is how we handled that, especially living in a very red state where people have different views on this. And then also how I advise other companies, because everybody has different business models. And for us, we were already paying pretty well, so it wasn't a huge jump to get to that number. What we did, which made my more liberal friends and my conservative friends all kind of go, I can live with that, is we made it and something that you had to earn. So we're going to hire you off the street if you're a brand new employee, whatever the market rate is. So if that market rate's only $14 or $15 an hour, that's where you're going to start. But here's the deal. If you will show up for work, if you will learn the skills that you need to learn and perform at an adequate expectation and live by our values, which basically means integrity and treating other people with respect. Some very simple requirements. We will guarantee that we will stair step you to $18 an hour in at least 3 years. And in doing that, what we're also trying to accomplish is, I'm personally a big believer in the dignity of work. So this isn't a handout to anybody. They earned their way to that. And it's also a retention hold on people, that they have this opportunity out there. They don't have to leave for 10 cents an hour going someplace else, because they have a future here. Even if they're going to struggle to build skills, they're going to get them to a new job within OneAmerica at a higher level. We also build pathways to do that, try to provide those types of opportunities. Now, the second part is, what do I tell other companies? I say, look, don't focus on what you can't do. Stay out of that noise. Focus on what you can do. So one other CEO that I talked to, that for them, it was a huge number. So what they did is their pathway originally, and they've done more since then, is they moved from $11 to $13. Okay, that's not 18. And then, but alongside that, they really put some energy into, they have lots of different levels of jobs. And this organization has tens of thousands of jobs in Indianapolis. And they created career pathways where people can actually see their way to $18 an hour within a reasonable number of years, thus creating what we call a promising job. It's not yet a good job, but a promising job. But by focusing on the assets that they had, which are different than the assets that we have at OneAmerica, they were able to build something that was credible and not just stair step it, but immediately build people and give people hope that there is a way to get you where you need to be so you can lift yourself out of poverty.
This is exciting to hear how all of this sort of comes together, and that sometimes, as we've gone through the national unrest and more people are really focused on this, and this is not just Black America, as Tony said, this is a whole lot of folks that are challenged. And how do we provide real solutions, not giveaways, not charity, but we're talking real solutions for people to improve their life. That's the exciting part for me in this. I want to stay a little bit on the benefit that I get as an employee at OneAmerica, the benefit I get of participating in the Urban League. And I want to stay in this financial literacy, well-being perspective. Tony, you talked about you all have a financial coach. And you said you've had some success. Can you share a little bit about that success? And then after you do that, Scott, you run a financial services company. You've got people out there helping people with their retirement and build their financial wealth. And I'd like you to share it from your perspective of how you're, as a company, that's the business you're in, of helping people do better in their financials. But Tony, start with that success that you're doing with the program that you've got going in the community.
So typically each year at the Urban League, through our workforce development initiatives, we will see maybe 2,000 people who will participate in a training program or an event or an initiative. And typically we will have somewhere in the area of maybe 400 to 500 people who will commit to the long-term work of being a member or a participant in the Center for Working Families. And so we are required as a part of that work to make sure that each participant receives financial coaching. We also work closely with them so that if they do not have an account, that they open up bank accounts. They start to work on credit building or improving their credit rating, if you will. So we're very fortunate to have here on site. Our building is home to a financial health federal credit union. And so they partner in the coaching and literacy effort with us, along with JP Morgan Chase Bank, as well as Regions Bank. And we welcome partnerships with everyone in that space, because oftentimes a lot of it's been about people being exposed and receiving this sort of instruction, direction, advice, if you will. And so that's an important part of what we're doing. And we're going to be looking at that overall as well when we start talking about economic development and wealth building as a part of the Quality of Life Initiative. And so that's a little bit of what we're doing in that space.
That's great. And so, Scott, you're in this business. It's sort of part of your business, but it really does get down to how you're trying to help Americans and the clients that you have a better life from a financial sense. So you share a little bit about the way you see this.
Yeah, I think we have work to do in this area as an industry and as a company. And I believe the first thing you got to do before you tell other people how to do their business, you got to start with yourselves. So we have literally hundreds of Black and brown employees in Indianapolis. And the first thing is how good a job are we doing making them financially educated, and given our specific skill sets, financial education evangelists in their own communities within Indianapolis. So that'll make a dent because it has a multiplying effect. And then we're investing a lot in education for other employers, and really focused on making sure that it is at a point and simple enough and culturally competent enough that at the lowest levels of those organizations, people can feel engaged and they can start to create the basic building blocks of financial education. And while we're there, what type of orbits are they moving in? And can we, since we've already built an education program for employer, what people that perhaps aren't employed with them, but maybe are contractors or other organizations or individuals that work with them, how can we provide financial literacy programs to them? Because it really does not cost us a whole lot to be able to expand that relationship, because most of it's done done remotely via the web. And we have one where we have a small retirement plan, and they have thousands of independent contractors that they work with. And we have opened up financial education, including the opportunity to call into an advisor for all of their affiliated people. And I think that's an idea that we could expand, particularly when you look at the gig economy and all these little satellites that all of our companies work with that may not have access to what a large employer would be able to provide. And then I think George is partnering with resources like the college and the 4 steps forward. And how can we put partners together? So how can we put the college and the Urban League or the Shepherd Community Center and bring those programs in locally and perhaps sponsor them with just maybe a little bit of elbow grease, a little bit of money to make sure that gets out there into the communities where it's most needed.
That's great. Thank you to both of you for sharing that. And one of the things I want to share, and this relates to both Scott and Tony's comments, is the college is undertaking some research on trust. One of our pillars is how do we address financial literacy and financial well-being for Black females? And we're looking at it broadly in terms of, where you are in your life cycle as a Black female, whether that's, how do I get started on my budget? How do I fix my credit? How do I start a business? How do I run my business better? So it's really trying to take a much broader swath as we look at Black women and financial literacy and financial well-being. But it's starting with this research around trust. Who do they trust to get the information from? Where do they get it now? What is it that they actually think they need? And they may or may not know that, but it's really trying to understand the right ambassador, the right source for them to feel confident that, one, they're getting the right information and they're trusting the person they're getting that information from so that they can move along in their life. And once we understand that, the fact is we really are going to be partnering with the OneAmericas of the world. We're going to be partnering with the Urban Leagues of the world because, again, all this is local. We want the Indianapolis local. We want the Chicago or the Detroit or any other city. We want to find the right organizations that help communities be able to trust the source, feel good about the information they're getting, and then be able to act upon that, and then have the kind of commitment like a OneAmerica, like an Urban League that is actually saying, not only are we delivering that for you, we're partnering with you to actually help you move along in that actual journey. So now, I'm listening to both of you, and I mean, if you get into this stuff, you get excited, I'm excited. The thing is, though, I know you don't do it by yourself. Tony, you're saying like, hey, we'll partner with more people on education. And Scott, I'm hearing you talk about, we talk to other companies. We have a leadership role in our industry. You all seem like you're pretty good at asking people for help. And the thing that I love about it is that that it's not something you can do singularly. It's something that is only going to happen collectively. So why don't, Scott, I'll go to you first and I'll come to Tony. Share with us that thought process of how do you try to be more inclusive with others participating with you to have that real impact in terms of what you're doing, and how do you go about asking people to get more involved?
I don't think there's any other way to do it right. If you're going to expect a guy like me to figure out how to help young African-American kids come into our workplace and feel comfortable, I'm the wrong guy to ask. In fact, most of our Black employees would probably be the wrong ones to ask. You really have to partner with people and create relationships, equal relationships, not unequal relationships because we're bringing the money and the jobs and they're asking. It's got to be a relationship of mutual trust where they are providing the type of support and expertise that they know how to do from living and breathing in those communities, and then teaching us what we need to know to provide the support in-house to be able to allow people to succeed. That's what our Pathways program does. So we only source young people for those jobs from community centers that we trust, that we know will really put in the effort and have the courage to be creative and try new things. And what we've learned from them is that we need to have two mentors inside this wasn't our idea, this was their idea. we need to have 2 mentors inside the company for each young person, at least at the outset. One is a personal mentor, someone that can just talk about what's going on. And the other is a professional mentor to help them learn the business, to help them feel comfortable in a professional environment. Without and we're teaching also these community centers what we need and what we look for in young people, and what is going to be successful and how they can be helping them on the other end of the bus line. So I think building those relationships and really understanding each individual partner is the only way to achieve success. We can't do it on our own.
Great. Tony.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I can tell you, dating back to my time at Indiana Black Expo and having the opportunity to work with people like the late Reverend Charles Williams at Circle City Classic, Bill Mays, Joe Slash, fast forward to Super Bowl, Mark Miles, Allison Melancton here at the Urban League. We've developed an incredible staff. Every step of the way, there's been this opportunity for mentorship, if you will, not only for myself, but the people that worked for me, and being able to collaborate in this community, which is huge, because you can look at something like a Circle City Classic, Super Bowl, and you would say, well, hey, 1 or 2 people were responsible for that. And absolutely not. With Circle City Classic, there were over 500 volunteers and a staff of 3. And so, and even you look at something like the Super Bowl effort here, same thing. Over 800 people played a role in serving and leading that effort in the community. And when you fast forward now to this moment in time where we find ourselves, Scott mentioned the leadership that he and others are providing as a part of the Business Equity for India initiative. Also, a number of the corporations that have made commitments around racial equity. And then the work that will happen as a part of the grant that we've received from the Lilly Endowment. Right now, we are engaging the community through work with Engaging Solutions, where at all levels of our community, we're asking Black people from grass tops to grassroots their thoughts about the quality of living of African Americans in this community and what they think the solutions and priorities should be for funding. We're also, as a part of that process with the grant, engaging thought leaders and experts in the areas of, again, Black business development, education, employment, health and wellness, housing and home ownership, because we know that the input is going to drive what our priorities will be. And so that this work that we're doing as a part of this grant initiative will really be an initiative that is for us, by us, but with input coming from the entire community. And I think, as Scott knows, when we all pull together in this city, whether it's for a Super Bowl, whether it's in looking at how we will all work together to address racial equity, we do amazing things when we work together. You can get far more done with a group of people than just 1 or 2 people trying to do everything and take all the credit.
You know, I listened to, and first of all, again, being from Kentucky and Indianapolis being one of the larger cities near us, when, hearing about the Circle City Classic, the Black Expo, things of that nature, I'll tell you, as a Black in the Louisville area, a lot of times I was like, wow, Blacks are doing so much better in Indianapolis. But it really was the result of partnerships and people willing to expand and do a lot more. So I listened to the 2 of you, and I really do think Indianapolis is a special place. Obviously, the city is hosting March Madness, so there's something special going on, and I assume everybody knows how to do this kind of stuff. So, you all have a history of doing this. So let me ask the question: when you think about, you've both been in the community for some time. So I'm in Louisville. I'm in another similar size city to Indianapolis. If somebody really wanted to get going and do more and do better, what are some of the things that you think make Indianapolis unique, and that you would tell others that if you're going to build this somewhere else, these are some of the components of the foundation that should exist? And Tony, let me start with you, because you've looked at it from some of the other things that you're doing, and now you've got a huge role in heading up the Indianapolis Urban League. But just a few little things that people should think about if I'm going to do this or I'm going to be part of it, what are the things that we really got to make sure we have down in order for us to be able to move forward?
Well, let me say this. Indianapolis is a special place with regard to how we pull together and work together, whether it be major events or initiatives. I've had the good fortune during my career to also consult with events and efforts in other cities, and the level of cooperation is not the same. And so it's critical that you develop relationships. Indy is no different from any other place. Relationships matter. And who are the key individuals in this community, regardless of where they're at on the political spectrum, and people from all backgrounds, getting them engaged and under the tent in support of the project, program, effort, policy, or legislation. Because all too often, I think people attempt to try to do things on their own, and they oftentimes think that what they're attempting to do is something new, when in fact, there may already be people at work. And so how we engage everyone becomes important. And our willingness to share not only in the work, but the spotlight becomes important as well. And we're also blessed in this community by the fact that we have people who don't necessarily seek spotlight, but are willing to give their all, lend their time, talent, and treasures to ensure the success of an initiative. And obviously great planning is important as well.
Right. Scott.
Yeah, and Indianapolis is not immune, and Indiana is not immune to some of the political challenges that other communities face. I mean, we've had times when the city council and the mayor in the past were really fighting it out, and right now it's the city and the state on certain issues. But when it comes to issues like equity, when it comes to issues like workforce development, we do come together, and it is relationships of mutual trust. And part of mutual trust to me is humility, is understanding that none of us have all the answers. I'll give you an example. We're proud of the potential for Pathways, but before we launched Pathways, my team and I, we personally walked around the city, not to everybody, but to key players, both in the minority community, in the business community, and in the nonprofit community. So the leader of the United Way actually went and spoke to the head of the Lilly Endowment, and we said, we're thinking about doing this. Have you ever seen this tried? And you think we're nuts? And the answer we got back is, no, we think this could work. We think you ought to go for it and continue to develop the idea. But recognizing that we don't have all the answers to this, and that we're going to need partners that can fill in for us, and that requires relationships. The other practical piece of advice I think I would give, particularly people in the business community in other cities, is it helps to have a convening body. So we have such a body. We have a couple of bodies in Indianapolis that are really important, and they're actually partnering, believe it or not, to create the Business Equity for Indy Committee. And first is the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, which was created 20 years ago, which every large for and nonprofit in Central Indiana, their CEOs are on that board, and they're expected to show up. So we can literally get a room with, the CEO of Lilly, the CEO of Anthem, the CEO of Cummins, myself, the head of the United Way, and all the presidents of the major universities in the area, and then government officials can come in and we can try to solve a problem. Also, for smaller companies, we have a very effective local Chamber of Commerce, who is focused not just on business issues, but on these social issues and quality of life. And having those convening bodies where then you can bring in organizations like the Urban League and other key organizations to partner, who are partnering with us on this to make sure we get it right. That's how you can build those relationships. It's easier to get your business community together when we all know each other. And we're not shaking hands for the first time when the bullets are flying because there's a problem in the community. So that's key. And I think that has been part of the tradition and expectation of every CEO to come to Indianapolis for a very, very long time.
So I wrote down some key points for the audience when you think about this in your community, your local community, and some of the things that that help you be successful. I wrote down the importance of relationships with the key players, and one, you got to know who those folks are, but you got to build a relationship. And I'll go back to something that Scott just said, is not when the bullets are flying. It's when they're not flying, when you're already building a bond and a relationship and a trust before those things happen. I wrote down the fact that you got to have all the players. You got to have government. You got to have private sector. You got to have community organizations. I love this. You got to be willing to check your ego at the door and share the spotlight, because this is not about you. This is about what it is we're trying to solve and achieve or have the impact for. I also wrote down planning, because I've been involved in enough activities where we didn't plan. We just thought we'd do something. We shot and then we aimed. There's another thing that I thought was important that came out that was said, is this mutual trust. Okay, we're in this, but your ego's at the door. We're doing something to be impactful for the community, but we have to trust each other. We have to trust that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, and I'm going to deliver my part, because my part is a piece of the key for this whole thing to be successful. I also love the fact that as you're going through this, Scott, you said it, like, I don't have all the answers. So seeking input from others and getting the diverse thought around the things that you really need to have, people who are experts at this, bringing that to the table in order for you to do it. And then this last thing that I think so many people forget, which is, okay, let's say we had all those other things. If we don't have a convening body to say how we're going to move forward together, you know what, this thing really could splinter very quickly. So those are, I think, some things that we got from these two experts in terms of what they shared, that they see that's made Indianapolis such a special place. So my next question really, so it comes off of that. So you got all these things, and Indianapolis is really a unique place, and you're doing some great things. If you could wave a magic wand and say, I need one more piece or two more things, what would it be? So Tony, like what, maybe it's another partner, whatever it is, but if I could wave a wand and say, this is another piece that I need, that I think we could really get further down the road.
Well, I can say this, George, I see it happening already. Scott made mention of the business equity for Indy effort. We also see the work that a number of the corporations are undertaking through their racial equity efforts. And then also the work of the corporate and community partners for racial equity, which Cummins is playing a major role in that. As Scott shared, everyone checking their egos at the door, acknowledging that there is work to do is crucial. And the fact that in this moment, because there's always the worry that, at a moment of unrest, everybody's worried and everybody's dialed in.
Right.
But since last summer, to see the level of focus and commitment from our corporate partners, not only with respect to what they will do with the resources, but they're also playing a role in leading legislative reform and helping to fight battles at the State House. The reality of it is this current legislative session has been a tough one, with so many attempts to establish policies and legislations that would further erode local control, in this case, things that appear to be directly targeted in Indianapolis. And it's crucial. That work is so crucial, because when you think about the overriding of the governor's veto around tenant rights and things of that nature, last year, the city spent $33.5 million to help 16,000 families avoid being evicted. And we were able to do that work collectively as a community because landlords and others had to play ball. Well, now they don't. So it's an example of when problems can be created. So to see our corporate partners leaning in and addressing issues and doing it in partnership with community organizations is crucial. Now I would say the thing that we need is just that long-term commitment around this, because, 5 years from now, I may not be at the Urban League. Scott may not be at OneAmerica. The leaders may change, but we didn't get here overnight with the struggles that we see happening in our community. And so we're talking about 10 to 20 years worth of commitment and work and resources to move the entire community forward. You know, Indianapolis can be what we want it to be if we all lean in.
That's great. Scott.
Well, first of all, Tony, if I just go on the record that over the next 5 years, if you hear I got a new job, please don't call to congratulate, because it wouldn't have been my idea. But there's one thing that we do have that I think is critically important that I really value, and I just want to make sure I say this. When you're working on racial equity, which is really what we're talking about right now, and the critical issue in front of us, you have to have a small handful of players for the corporate community that are in the Black community that can help organize and shape thought so that we can and kind of filter what's important from what's less important. And Tony is one of those amazing people who's frankly has the courage to stand at that crossroads and to play that role so that we can be focused, because there's a lot of voices out there. And that's, for a guy in my position, that's invaluable. So Tony, you've been incredible in that. And you and a very small group of others that we have relationships of trust with, that, okay, now we really understand where we're trying to head with this. And then if I could wave my magic wand, it would be speed. I'm anxious to show progress. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to have to resource up and really leverage the human capital to drive this forward. We've got the money. We've got the ideas, and now we need to drive the result, because they're watching the world, not just the Black community. Every single employee in OneAmerica is watching right now, and they want to see a different result, not just a bunch of ideas and nice thoughts. So I want to see speed to result, and even if it's in small steps. And I would absolutely underline, Tony, you have to be in it to win it. And that is a multi-year commitment. I'm going to have to bind whoever follows me in this job, which hopefully will be a long time from now. I'm going to have to make sure that they are bound to the same commitment that I'm making right now, because it's going to take that long to resolve some of these issues.
That is great. And, it's those are the great things for us to hear. And it's exciting, which I'm not surprised that, Tony, the thing you mentioned is happening, that there's a business equity group that's doing the things that you feel like are going to be, another vital step in terms of what the future is. And Scott, I think we're all where you are, is like, yeah, it's speed. Can we get those wins, even those small wins, one, to keep the momentum going, two, to keep all those involved to say, you know what, this is happening. It is making a difference. We've all talked about that since the death of George Floyd last year. And I know that now from a nation, we're now all peeled in on the actual trial. But the thing that I've been excited about is, so far, the commitment to do something has held. I haven't seen people like, well, I'm wandering off now to another subject matter. People are still laser focused on saying this moment's different and we're going to do something about it, and we're going to move the needle and really have an impact on improving the opportunities for all Americans, trying to address this wealth gap. And there's a statistic that is out there from the Federal Reserve that says that if you just address the racial wealth gap for Blacks alone, over the next 8 years, we could increase GDP by 1.5 trillion with a T dollars. That's real money. That's money for the economy. That's money for the business. That's money for a community and a people. So we have to think about that when we're looking at this, what you are hearing is public-private partnerships. It includes government. But these are things that are making a real difference in people's real lives about economic and financial matters that are going to improve overall for everyone. So there was one comment that I saw in the chat that I actually want to add, is that on the list of things that are important for communities to come together and work and make progress is this thing called communication. And the importance of communicating. And I want to add a component that also says, and when we're communicating, let's make sure we have the same definition. Because the thing we can't have is great communication. It's just your definition of leadership. My definition of leadership is two different things, and we're going in two different directions. So that's another component. So we're almost out of time. So what I'd like to do is I want to reach back and now say to Tony and Scott, if there's any closing comments, something you didn't say that you want to tell us or something you want to reiterate, we would welcome hearing that. And I'll go to Scott first, and then Tony will turn it over and let you do it. And then I'll close and give you the last code that you need to have. Scott.
I would just leave you with a call to action and the plea to focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. These problems can seem overwhelming, but if you focus on what you can do, then step by step, we make progress.
Awesome. Awesome. Tony.
And I would say to everyone that's participating today, have the courage to speak truth, the courage to be your brother and sisters keepers, because we have so many people struggling in this community and across our country, and the courage to be committed to that call of action, whether it be giving people jobs with livable wages, developing affordable housing for families, providing better resources and funding for our schools that are struggling and that are under-resourced, doing the work that needs to be done to eliminate food deserts, health deserts. Have the courage and be committed to stand up now.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you very much for imparting your knowledge and wisdom on us. I hope everyone got something out of it. I know I did. I always learn something when I'm around people who've been living and breathing this every day and actually making real progress. Here's the most important thing. I hope you've got something out of today. This is a powerful, powerful message. And Indianapolis and what's going on there with the Indianapolis Urban League, OneAmerica, and many other companies that are involved, the Lilly Foundation, some exciting stuff's happening there. And I hope that you've been able to get something that you can take back to your community and make a difference for other people's lives. Thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.